Hello.
Hello, and welcome to Friend Credits. We are talking today about a very fun movie. It's Typhoon Club. Shinji Sōmai's 1985 slam dunk, dude. I absolutely love this movie. It set us off on a Shinji Sōmai kick. We also since have acquired the Blu-ray for Love Hotel, which we've watched and love. And also Sailor Suit Machine Gun. I try to say that 4 times real quick.
Sailor Suit and Machine Gun.
Sailor Suit and Machine Gun, which we're meaning to watch. Yeah, I think a lot of the times what we want to do is talk about movies that are, for whatever reason, at that next iceberg tier down, that level of obscurity. You know, you meet people and they go, "Oh, I like movies." "Oh, you like movies? What kind of movies?" And then they'll say, Holy Mountain, or, you know, lately I think when we talk about movies, I want to recommend to people Perfect Days. And that's a huge one. I think it is, from what I've heard of people talking about ketamine, I think Perfect Days is a movie that is like ketamine, right?
Yeah.
But it's not at all obscure.
Yeah.
It's like top recommended on every list of the last 2 years.
Yes.
Right?
And actually, an actor from this film was in Perfect Days. I couldn't figure out who he played, but the teacher in this film is in, it's 30 plus years later, so
I'd have to
wouldn't
think he would
recognize
have been
him.
the guy that ran the cafe with the soup or something.
Maybe, yeah, that makes sense.
There weren't a lot of roles in Perfect Days, so I would have
Yeah.
thought a lot of those people were non-actors. There are a lot of roles in Typhoon Club, so when you said that,
Yes.
I was like, it could have been anyone. Who would? And then I realized there was like no one in that movie.
Yeah.
One of the kids from this movie might have been the younger guy, but no. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's a fun fact for you.
Fun fact.
For this episode, you wanted to watch a Swedish love story. Roy Andersson.
Yeah.
And I just was like, oh, that rewatch would be a slog to me. But Typhoon Club, the alternate pick, is not at all a slog. It's a movie that is great on, I'm assuming, any and all rewatches, and it happened to be a rainy day. So we picked it up.
So it was perfect. And it's interesting because those films do have kind of similar themes of very young actors playing their age and these long unbroken takes, which are characteristic of Shinji Sōmai's filmography. He does that in Love Hotel as well. I'm assuming he does that in Sailor Suit and Machine Gun. They seem related, but of the two, I think revisiting Typhoon Club, you see why it won the Grand Prix at the Tokyo Film Festival.
Yeah, was it the first Tokyo Film Festival?
Yeah, the first Tokyo International Film Festival in 1985.
Which is just neat. Okay, so we end up doing film by comparison. I'm pretty bad with names, but not really names of films. Comparison is the thief of joy. Not necessarily in this case, because I say it has kind of the variety of actors that maybe Battle Royale would have.
True.
I think it has the rain effects and the rainy day-ness of Clue, stuff like that. The setting of this just being in an abandoned, almost abandoned. Now in our day, 40 years later, that the school is abandoned. It's kind of falling apart, leaking. It's just a fascinating schoolhouse movie.
It is really interesting to see these films made in Japan in these country schools. And you're always kind of impressed with the country school. You're like, wow, they have a big pool with this crazy shower mechanism on it. They have these giant windows. They have big gymnasiums. You're like, oh, okay. I mean, it wasn't the most impoverished prefecture in Japan, clearly. But everyone at this school has this complex about being farmers' kids or country kids. And the main character, Mikami, I can't remember his name, Mikami. There's this dynamic where he wants to go to school in Tokyo, and they romanticize Tokyo. It had me thinking of Your Name, which we watched recently.
Yeah.
The main girl in that really is like, oh, I wish I was a cute boy in Tokyo, that kind of thing, which I find is a kind of a common theme in Japanese cinema.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you'll have a lot of movies in Japan that are super urban. And this is somehow a little bit less urban. This isn't, your Tokyo gangbusters. It definitely has that I want to be in a big city, while simultaneously being way more urban than any place in America.
Yeah.
And it actually, kind of to that thought, somewhere in this movie, I realized that the most common spaces around this world are regulation sports, ball fields, swimming pools, because this movie, it gets so much out of its frame. It will, set up a grand, wide, establishing shot of a school, and then have the students run laps in the frame, parallel to the vanishing lines of the school, but then also perpendicular to that in a square,
Yeah.
while you have a conversation in the middle of it. The wind is blowing. I mean, this is a movie where the cinematography is pretty much second to none.
Yes.
When you watch movies like what we just got, the 4K of Days of Heaven, there are movies that you go, whoa, no, this is second to none. And at some point, it has to be about taste. But this movie ticks all of the master boxes. It uses depth, it uses reflections, it uses particles, motion in water, in foliage, in the actors. I mean, the staging, literally staging. At some points, they're in the otherwise abandoned school's stage, and they're moving from left to right, forward and back. There's a scene in this movie where the teacher is trying to stop 3 separate fights in his classroom, but for us, it is all framed in a long wide where there's a group fight in every corner of the frame, and he has to move between them. A lot of the times, you have no frame of reference. I mean, on second viewing this movie, there is a scene that stuck out to me more where the character stacks chairs, and I can kind of imagine the size of a school desk and go, oh, okay, so he's on 2 desks tall, there's another window, but it doesn't at all translate intuitively to our size of classrooms, our size of streets or homes or living room. Sometimes in like Japanese realty, they might talk about a house in terms of tatami mats. They might say, oh, this room is 7 tatami mats.
Right.
Dude, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And then these are little kids. In all of that, I'm the last person to relate to ball fields.
Yeah.
But the scenes where they're like standing on a basketball court or something, I'm like, oh yeah, wow, this isn't the big city,
No.
but this is super dense.
Yeah, there's a lot of people living here.
Where I grew up, there would be 7 ball fields, and then they would have fields on either side of them, and on the other side of those, they'd have forests, and then highways, and then church parking lots, and then fields, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you couldn't meet your friends anywhere.
No.
When there was a storm where I grew up, you were stuck at home waiting for the power to get back on. These guys, in typical kind of 80s fashion, in an 80s movie, they'd be riding their Schwinn bike. In this, they can just walk around. So
They run a lot.
Yeah.
They just run to the place they need to go.
But anyway, over to you for the plot synopsis. Here,
Okay, plot synopsis. So this is one where I can do a spoiler-free plot synopsis in probably 1 sentence. So the plot of this movie is that a group of middle school kids get stuck in their school during a typhoon. And that's it, really. I mean, that I think is the broad summary, but I can go into depth, so of course, spoilers. So for a spoiler review, I'm gonna try and keep it brief though. Basically, this movie takes place over 5 days. We have the one character who's very serious. We have the one character who is clearly traumatized and kind of violent. He assaults one of the other girls.
He's challenged.
We have kind of a fool character, Akira, who isn't locked in the school with him. He's just in other scenes. And then we have this girl group led by a girl with pigtails. I don't remember her name. She and her best friend are in love. They're like experimenting sexually. Akira spies on them, so we kind of know that they're lesbians. And then there's the third girl who's kind of a manic pixie dream girl. And then also we have Rie, who's Mikami's maybe estranged girlfriend. they're growing apart, and that's a sad thing in her life. She wakes up the day of the typhoon to her mother gone. She doesn't know where her mother is, and that is terrifying for her. So she decides to run away that day. She runs away to Tokyo while everyone else is trapped in the school, and she has her own really sad adventure as well. So they're trapped in the school, they're dancing, they're coming to terms with the violence between Ken and the girl he has a crush on, which is a crazy scene. We'll have to talk about that. They're basically just letting loose. Lots of reggae beats that they're dancing to.
Yeah, a lot of kids just playing in the rooms of an abandoned school.
Having fun. It's kind of
Plus
wish fulfillment.
terrible sexual assault.
Yes, terrible sexual. Well,
and almost sexual
violent.
assaults.
Yeah.
And then the teacher's subplot.
Then there's the teacher subplot. The teacher is from, we assume, Tokyo, and he kind of looks down on these kids of farmers. And he has a girlfriend who, the mother of the girlfriend really wants him to marry her. They're in their 30s, whatever. And he proves to be kind of an unreliable adult character, I think is what he
that's a good way to put it.
symbolizes. And so anyways, they're spinning the whole typhoon in this school. They dance in the rain, in the eye of the typhoon. It's fun. And then at the end, Mikami has decided over the night that he is going to kill himself the next morning. And so he dramatically kills himself in front of them. And it's very sad and kind of strange. We'll have to talk about that as well. And then Rie comes home from Tokyo, and her and Akira are walking up to the school, and they're basically just like, wow, la la la, not knowing what's coming for them. And that's the film, I would say.
In relation to the degrees of obscurity that we were talking about earlier, you start doing the synopsis and like trying to highlight the kids, and I'm like, well, maybe for me that's the third time I watched this movie, which I gave 5 stars, and maybe this is why it is obscure. Sometimes it's the foreign language stops most people from watching it. Okay, right? It being a few decades old stops another group of people from watching it.
Yeah.
But it having a bunch of child nudity pretty much puts it near the bottom of the obscurity iceberg.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's not lingered on.
It's not lingered
it's
on.
from far away.
And we can talk about that in specifics, but that's another reason movies will be obscure, right? So it's all of these things. You don't have to know the names of the characters in this movie or even be able to recognize them apart to love this movie. It is such a slice of life that, seriously, synopsis, spoiler free, 5 kids get stuck in a school for a few days during a storm. But there are these moments in it which it lingers on that like you can't do a service to by trying to connect the dots between them almost or going into it. Scenes of the one we talked about, the troubled kid, the challenged kid. I don't want to give him that slack, honestly. I think this is a movie that paints everyone in a really humanist light. And this kid is like really truthfully a brutal sex assaulter that if he did this to your kid, you would kill him.
You'd seek revenge,
but it shows you him being challenged, having these issues, repeating things, lingering on stuff, slamming the door, having a home problem. They lash out at his home. They throw rocks at his house.
Yeah.
So you kind of think like, yeah, this kid's having a bad house life. He commits an attack on this one girl at a point in the movie that makes you think like, oh yeah, he's fully in trouble. He walks it past where you could deny it. Yeah. Then he walks it past where you could defend it and walks it past, he just keeps going. He commits every crime in the book in this attack that makes you think like it's over for him. He's going to prison.
We know he has a crush on this girl as they kind of talk about it, but during a science class they're using Bunsen burners and he puts something really hot down the back of her shirt, and that's his first attack on her.
I wasn't even thinking of that one.
And afterwards, the girl is in the nurse, and the nurse is cleaning her up, and he's there. You're like, why is he there with the nurse? That's so bizarre. They bring him in, and then the nurse says, come in here, and she basically shoves his face into the injury that he caused and says, do you like this? Is this what you wanted? How dare you? And to me, I see that, and I think, oh, you're like almost making it a fetish for him. Like you're shoving his face into this half-clothed girl, and it's almost like you're into it. But then later on, when he assaults her the second time, when the school is abandoned and no one's around to help her, he chases her around for a long time. I mean, and you know it's real because these kids are fighting, they're struggling, it's an unbroken take. Some of the best acting, I think, in the film is both of them in this scene. I mean, it must have been to some degree real. They're running around, he's, kicking the door down, repeating his scary phrase that he says, like, welcome home, I'm home, welcome home, I'm home is what he repeats. And he's kicking down the door, she's trying to keep him out, and then finally he gets to her and he rips her shirt off and sees this injury that he's caused once again. And for some reason that stops him. It stops the attack. He doesn't sexually assault her. I mean, he's obviously assaulting her.
Yeah, damage is done. I mean, he's like kicked in the door at the school.
She's bleeding,
Yeah.
She's terrified. And then afterwards, I think Mikami finds them and he's just kind of like, what happened? Because when I came in, you both were just lying on the floor crying. And she forgives him. I don't know why.
This is the problem of in this movie, you could fall into a million little pockets of analyzing the scenes that does it a disservice. I mean, when you say the best performances, there's another performance in this that made me realize, oh wow, this is next level child acting. And it's when you would trust these kids to take long scenes where they chew up the scenery of a nothing room. And that one girl gets in bed and writhes around, but before that, like, she sits and she combs her hair. There's a lot of stuff in this movie, like, you can't show, where you're like, wow, man, they trusted these kids to do it.
Yeah.
They put the film on and they said, I'll call cut in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's wild to do that. But you start to realize, again, on my second viewing, oh, I'm not distracted by them in this. It's better than many long take adult movies in that respect. These kids really do make believe very effectively. The other thing about that confrontation is it's early in the storm, and the cinematography, again, in the masterful way. It's a long hallway. They follow down it, but on one side of the hallway, you have windows that are being rained against, which are your primary light source. So you've got that dappled, wavy rain light in this otherwise dim hallway from just an overcast day. And then on the other side of the hallway, you have frosted windows into the classrooms. And he chases her down the hall, and then she goes into the classroom and shuts the door. And he's on the side of it that the camera is on, and you see his reflection in the frosted glass, and you see her barely through the frosted glass, and then it's being lit just in such a masterful way that you're using, reflections with bent light pounding on the glass. I mean, that's really next level point. You get a lot of those in this movie. Speaking of masterful, the sound design in this movie is some of the best sound design of any of this era of film or earlier. Yeah. I mean, sound design is legitimately something that just gets better. The older you go back and watch movies, the worse they are. That's another reason that older films are more obscure.
True.
And the 80s is this Goldilocks zone of somehow like perfectly done physical analog film mixed with like, wow, they finally figured out sound design. And this movie has, because of a storm, in this era of Schoolhouse, the wind effect that you'll get while they slide and close open windows. And as they do it, it goes from to silent.
Mikami-kun.
And there's whole
and
scenes
then they'll open
where
it back
silent.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the wind is really strong before the storm comes. Then of course there's the rain sound, which sometimes is just in the background, and then sometimes the rain is so loud that it's like cacophonous and it's almost too loud. You're like, ah. And then sometimes that there's a very effective use of the synth in the background, this like whirring kind of synth that reminds you of the rain as well. And then there's a lot of, like we said, diegetic music in this film where they're listening to the reggae beats, like Japanese ska or something.
さてさて、今宵限りのワンナイトショー、軽快なレゲエに乗って登場しますトップバッターは3年5組35番。
Every turn you're just like, wow, I feel like I'm in it because the sound is so immersive.
When the teacher is singing karaoke
Yes.
in the middle of the storm and he opens the door. It gives you the only other movie that I've really thought, wow, this sound design. Because most of the time, sound design is to fall into the background. You're not supposed to notice it. So there's plenty of movies from the 90s where there's raining or you're in a storm, and yeah, okay, it's naturalistic, it blends in. You shouldn't think about it at all. I can't commend that in the same way.
Yeah.
This reminds me of Call Me By Your Name, which is a movie where they're having this like hot, steamy sex affair in their
This old
villa.
house, yeah.
And it gives you a scene where you hear a shutter slamming against the house at a rhythm in the wind, and they walk through the house. And they use that slamming shutters sound to establish volume, mass, right, to this building. And it makes you realize from that point, you nervously reconsider. And then from that point, you are aware that this is this is a hyper real world where the other characters are aware of your affair because they could hear you sucking on that fruit that you were being so weird about. You know what I mean?
They could hear that from downstairs, yeah.
They could hear that down by the pool, dude.
Yeah.
And then you wake up in the morning and everyone's smirking and they're just like totally tunnel vision, have no idea. This movie gives that same sense of mass with its sound design. I can tell how thick the walls are. I can tell that this schoolhouse is torn down by now because it's leaking, you know? The windows are junk and so-and-so's house like echoes in a specific way. And yeah, it's just absolutely nuts how well they do that. I guess moving on from the technical stuff though, then the other thing are those couple of scenes. And yeah, it's hard to pick ones, but I think that if we had to pick a couple scenes, there's the dancing in the rain scene that you're left on almost.
And that one's cool because they hear the rain stop, so they go outside and they realize, oh, this is the eye of the typhoon. So they're kind of celebrating that, oh, it stopped, and then the typhoon rolls back in and envelops them, and they're dancing and they're singing, and it's this long, unbroken shot from pretty far away, and because it has to be, because they're taking off their clothes.
I don't know if it has to be, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because like what we were saying with child nudity, there are those few movies that will get into the Criterion Collection despite. But they usually will either be focusing on the child's nudity as sexual, like as their sexual awakening, or it'll be like...
It's a bad thing. It'll be like a negative kind of thing.
This is a weird balance of like, I guess these are teenagers. I think they're prepubescent, safely, I would say.
I think they said at one point 15.
But
They look
young 15.
Very young.
So it's like a weird thing to be like, oh, it's in that category of movies, you know, like Walkabout. But it's so not sexual.
It's so not sexual, and their nudity is an expression of feeling free. It's not an expression of sexuality or of negativity in any way.
Oh, like that movie,
They're
Let the Right
free.
One In, that vampire movie, that Swedish vampire movie.
Yeah.
Where it's like a little girl vampire, and
But
at one
she's
point
old.
he like, you see her naked and she's very deformed, but the point of it is like she's a monster. She's not really a little girl.
Right.
That's such like a traumatizing portrayal.
Exactly.
This isn't that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's unnecessary.
I can't graft an American experience onto it.
Right.
Right. There was no time of like that age, especially, that anything like that would have flown I don't know a single American that's like, what do they call that when you run naked?
Oh, you're streaking.
Streaking.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, streakers.
Like
yeah.
streaking doesn't happen. So for me to go, oh yeah, half a dozen little kids went streaking. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll believe it when I see it. You know what I mean?
To me, it kind of made sense because there's the girl gang who are these three girls who are very silly, and anytime there's a heavy moment, they're like, let's dance, and they put on music and they get everyone to dance. And they are the main instigators of taking off their clothes. They get naked in the rain, and notably, the girl who's assaulted doesn't. She keeps her underwear on. The boys keep their underwear on. Well, I think maybe they take their own. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
it's those three girls who are these girls, like, let's just have fun. Let's just take off our clothes. They're just trying to escape their lives through just dancing and being silly.
And all the while, the girl who's gone to Tokyo is having another one of the crazy scenes. She gets stuck in the rain there while like shopping for clothes, and it jumps to a scene where she has been taken home by some sleazebag young guy who you get so nervous for this girl. She gets taken back to his apartment, and he immediately is like, take your clothes off, get dressed, you're gonna catch a cold.
Yeah.
Do you need new clothes? And she goes and changes, but there's like air guns laying around and like gun ads on the walls.
Oh,
and like
really?
he just has all these warning signs. Like she
She-
asks if you go to college, and he was
Yeah.
like, something like that.
Something like that. And she's like, oh, Tokyo University? He's like, sure, whatever you say.
It's
So is it implying he's like Yakuza or something like that? Like,
no, he
I don't-
wishes.
yeah,
He's just a sleazebag.
he's a loser.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just a loser.
And he knows she's in middle school. He's like, oh, you're a middle schooler? She's like, yeah. So he's just an open creep. It's not like he's trying to lie to himself about taking home a middle schooler. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and he's like really pushy with her, and she, you know, she does get away. So I don't want that to like scare people into, you know, she gets
Thank
away
goodness.
unharmed. But you're just like
Yeah.
left kind of really nervous. That adds some suspense to this movie. There are a few of those scenes. Like it's not a toothless movie. It has a lot of like joy, singing, playing. Make believe, kids getting into like shenanigans, but at the same time it also has scary parts where there are, you know, people preying on the vulnerable, lashing out at them, and it shows you how that repeats through time, different age groups. The teacher is an interesting bridge character because he's not mature, but he's an adult. So the
Yes.
kids can judge him and say, you're a loser, I'm never going to be like you, but at the same time when they get in trouble, they call him for help, and he's not prepared to help them.
He's not going to help. He's drunk. He's saying, what are you talking about? What do you mean?
You
He's,
should have called the janitor.
Yeah.
But
Or
you didn't
anyone
have his
else.
number.
Yeah. And I'm not really sure what they needed help with, but
Yeah, I don't know why they couldn't have walked home in the rain, but they didn't
Yeah.
want to for one reason
No.
or another.
Yeah.
You know, they just didn't have the home they wanted to go back to. It was like
yes.
opportunity strikes kind of situation that of course they are going to be at this sleepover at school. And then I guess the last scene that I would venture to mention is the suicide scene near the end, because the first time we watched this, it really took me off guard because I was so perplexed about what this kid was doing.
Right.
He spends minutes stacking chairs and desks.
And that's when the film goes completely silent. There's no wind, no rain. The typhoon has stopped, and I think it's kind of morning time, and the sound just fades out to nothing as he's stacking these chairs up.
At first I thought, well, they're just doing a quirky relatability thing. They've done this earlier with the girl like writhing around and combing her hair. Yeah, I guess we've all thought, oh, how could we stack desks? Could you ever stack a school desk 3 high? Could you ever, what if you built a fort out of chairs and a desk? You get that he's playing. But then the next morning he wakes up and again starts slowly interacting with the chairs. He ascends them very calmly while everyone is presumably sleeping around him in the room. And he goes to this level of origami swans suspended from the ceilings. And he's backlit by the double windows. And he wakes them up, he gives them a little speech.
And he says, you need to know what death is like. You need to have a solemn moment in your life so that you can spend the rest of your life knowing what death is and knowing what sadness is.
And then he jumps out of the window, and they don't stop him, and he falls. And I think in what is like actually a great balance of the magical realism that makes you feel comfortable with these adult themes and these children's situations and not leave on a sour foot, you get to see he sunk into the puddle. Like, it was such a mucky, swampy mess after the rain that he falls and now his legs stick up out of the water.
Yeah, like he dove into the wet ground and they rush outside, and it is kind of like a jokey moment, like a slapstick kind of moment where they're all, and his legs are just out of the water.
I legitimately wondered, like, at that point, you could pull him out and he would be alive, I bet.
Yeah.
It seemed to me like he'd have 2 broken wrists or something, or maybe like a broken neck, but he probably died. If he did die, I'm assuming he died, he probably drowned in mud.
Yeah, which is terrible.
Yeah.
The worst way. Let's talk about Shinji Sōmai, because I think he does have a really interesting history.
That is so true. That's a good point.
Interestingly enough, he was studying at law school when he dropped out to become a director. I saw on some possibly sketchy websites that he studied at the Nikatsu Film Company. I don't know, I thought they were just a film company, but maybe they offer classes in directing and stuff like that. And the Nikatsu Film Company is one of the oldest production companies in the world. It started in 1912 and then was consolidated and had its golden era in the 50s with like samurai films and that sort of thing. But then in the 70s and the 80s, it was kind of revived in this style known as Roman porno, which is kind of these romantic pornographic films that Japan was well known for at that time.
Yeah, like this here.
And it was kind of their second golden era. Love Hotel is a Roman porno, and I believe it's the only movie that Sōmai made with Nikatsu.
Well, this is the director's company.
The director's company is his company that he formed after studying with Nikatsu.
Okay.
And
This does say Nikatsu on it, yeah, and director's company.
Yeah.
That's
So
interesting.
he formed the director's company after learning how to direct from Nikatsu with a couple of other directors at that time, and they went hard in the 80s. He made 8 films in the 80s, and in 1985, he made 3 films. He made Typhoon Club, he made Love Hotel, and then he made a third called Snow Song. He's known for his coming-of-age films. Sailor Suit and Machine Gun is coming-of-age. Typhoon Club is coming-of-age. His other big film, Moving, is a coming-of-age film.
Moving is his maybe most well-known.
Probably his most well-known. I think a lot of people came to Typhoon Club from that film. And so he made those 3 films in the same year. Kind of the standout is Love Hotel. It's not similar to the other kinds of films he was making.
Hotel, I really like. It is erotica, I would say. Yeah, that one shot in this movie is like the sexiest shot in a movie. It's up there.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Again, they described these as romantic pornography.
Yeah. But it's not pornography by today's standards.
No.
This doesn't come close to movies like Nymphomaniac or anything even like that.
And this one's interesting because there is some censorship in it, some blurring of things. They don't like to show any pubic hair, so there would be blurring of pubic hair in that one. Shinji Sōmai is obviously a well-known director in Japan. He died in 2001, but he was a big influence on directors like Ryusuke Hamaguchi, who did Drive My Car and Evil Does Not Exist, and Happy Hour, I think is his other big film. The style of the long unbroken shots and the lingering feeling of the drama.
Yeah, the director's company is almost a movement in that way. It's crazy to me because he has this polar style, and so few filmmakers do that, where you work on, movies that are heartwarming stories of children and then erotic stuff.
In the same year.
Yeah, in the same year.
Yeah.
And again, that's why we're going deeper. The 2 that we've seen, Love Hotel and Typhoon Club, I love, and they're so different. I'm excited for this and Luminous Woman. And he has another movie I really want to see, P.P. Rider. And I think P.P. Rider is a really funny name.
Yeah.
Similar to Blumpkin Soup. Or Bumpkin Soup.
Bumpkin Soup.
Blumpkins.
I
are
hope
different.
not Blumpkin soup,
But
jeez.
come on, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
close.
yeah. Bumpkin soup is
Cut me some
crazy.
slack.
Yeah, Bumpkin is funny.
These third window films releases of these movies have been great.
Yeah.
You know, is that what this is? Is this
I
third
don't
window?
know, is it?
Cinema Guild. I guess
Cinema
not.
Guild. And then that's third window, and then this is Arrow Video.
Yeah,
So.
but Third Window has been putting out the most of these directors' company movies.
Yeah.
So kudos to them. Typhoon Club being in 4K is really why I got it. This movie, like, some movies just pop off, right, in the Blu-ray community. And this did. I think it has great artwork. People had been excited to see it.
And like we said, there are a lot of very wide setback shots from far away.
Yeah.
And so I think the 4K really does that a lot of service because you get all the detail of this really well composed scene.
We've now watched this Blu-ray twice. I was surprised on this viewing that it doesn't have Dolby Vision or any HDR, but it is a high bitrate file. And that really goes towards grain and that movement, which is something that high bitrate, you know, if you've seen a movie that had a lot of grain and then it was converted to video, they are always using digital noise reduction, grain reduction to get it to sit on the disc comfortably within the headspace. This sitting at 95 megabits or whatever allowed it to just show you some of that grain. They didn't have to remove as much of it, and that helps. This
Especially
needs
with
it.
all the rain
Oh,
and the movement of everything. so.
Dude, totally. All of the above.
Another kind of funny thing I was reading about when I was looking through people's Letterboxd reviews was that this film came out in 1985, and what also came out in 1985 was The Breakfast Club,
Oh.
which, if you just had that one-line description of it, kids get stuck in a school. It seems like it would be very similar, but it's not at all. And it's kind of funny, like I think people did come into this film thinking, oh, it's the Japanese Breakfast Club. It's not. It's not the Japanese Breakfast Club at all. But I do think that's kind of a funny comparison.
That's on two spectrums, right? You have, of course, the nationality spectrum,
Yeah.
but then also you have the difference in kids coming into high school and kids leaving high school. When you're an adult, you look at college kids and you think they look like middle schoolers, but there truly is a gigantic leap between people incoming freshmen and exiting seniors
Yeah.
in high school. So yeah, would I like to see this if it had high school, like older? Always. I mean, that's one of our biggest things
Always.
we harp on is I wish they could just make content not about high schoolers, but instead about college kids, so that it's not really weird all these things you're doing with them.
Just make them adults.
Yeah, it wasn't relatable to me.
I know.
Just literally changed. I mean, you could do that with subtitles,
Yeah.
but not in this movie because they're little kids.
Yeah, they're clearly little kids. And maybe it's the uniform thing. They love the aesthetic of the school uniform, so they want to make them in middle school or high school for that reason, but
Yeah.
whatever. You can put some college kids in uniforms.
Or say
Why
they're exiting
not?
seniors.
Yeah. We highly recommend Typhoon Club. 5 stars.
Yeah, 5 stars.
5-star
A break
movie.
from the normal. I can't really remember the last 2 movies we did, but they were probably 2 stars that we liked.
Yeah, well, on the Silver Globe
Yeah.
is, I would say, a 4.5 star.
Whatever. Yeah.
But this is truly like one of my favorite films of all time. On a rewatch, I only loved it more.
Totally.
There's just so much in this film to love.
Check it out.
Check it out.
Affiliate link below. Like and subscribe.